there's business owners who want to take their business to the next level, then that's silly. And we've had this conversation even off camera, whereby it's all about message to market match. If you can actually zero in on a niche quantity of people who are very high prospects for your business, for your products or services, that's much better than just spraying bullets.
It's funny you should say that, because a lot of people look at, okay, well, how many hits am I getting on my website? How many people are turning up or coming through my doors? How many people are turning up to my events? And they think that's one of the most important metrics.
Yep.
But as you and I know, it's I wouldn't say it's an irrelevant metric, but what the most important metric is how many of the right people. Because would you agree that you might have 300 people come through your door, but every person who comes through your door, hits your website, turns up at your event, that takes resources, that costs money.
Yeah.
And they're the things that can essentially send a business broke if it's not giving
absolutely.
you a return.
And in the book that you very kindly promoted at the beginning of the interview, mate, I've got a story in there about Leif Garrett. And again, because you're quite a few years younger than me, you're probably shaking your head who the...
He's a musician.
Leif Garrett. Yeah, that's right. He was a big pop star back in the 80s. He was the David Cassidy or the Justin Bieber at the time. Yeah. And this twit decided when he was at Roseland Shopping Centre as the promotions manager that he might just see if the record mob, the Sanity style record store that was bringing him out to Australia, might like him to appear at Roselands. And they said, oh yeah, right. I had no idea this was Beatlemania. I just knew that he was a pop star.
Right.
Guess what? Every girls' high school within 20 kilometres of this shopping centre basically closed down for the day. All the girls came to Roseland's shopping centre.
Wow.
So there was about 15,000 girls there. And this idiot decides that just before he comes on stage, he was landed by helicopter with an armoured vehicle that brought him to the side of the shopping centre. That's how big he was, but I didn't know. I decided, well, why don't we get the girls excited? So we ramped up the music. His big hit song. Well, all the girls just pushed forward as if thinking he was coming on stage. The police didn't even let him on stage. He appeared at like a papal balcony at the very top of the shopping centre for 15 seconds before they whizzed him back to the helicopter. It was Beatlemania on steroids.
Wow.
We had that many girls push forward. We had weld mesh fencing around the stage at that time. So you can imagine a few arms went in and we had ambulances backed. I've got in the book, there are photos of ambulances backed into the shopping centre, picking up girls with broken arms and legs, taking them away.
Wow.
I argued the next morning at the management meeting that we got a lot of people into the shopping centre, but we sold bubblegum. And that was a classic case of numbers not meaning anything.
Wow, that is such a great example. Okay, so lesson number one, or mistake number one, bigger isn't better. Mistake number two?
Not surrounding yourself with the right people. And I'm sure you would agree with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think when you get to my age, you realise that you are absolutely who you mix with. And I've been relatively lucky throughout my career of having good positive spirits around me, but yeah, there's been on the odd occasion where I haven't, and I guess you would call those people passengers, and you've trusted those passengers to do a job, but because they don't have the passion or the eye for detail that you do, then,
of course,
unfortunately it doesn't work.
So get the right people. I think Jim Collins, have you read his book, From Good to Great?
Yep.
He talks about getting the right people on the bus and getting the wrong people off the bus.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Okay, so the first mistake was bigger isn't better. The second mistake was get the right people around you, get the right people on the bus.
Yep.
So what would be the third biggest mistake that you've made?
Thinking that I could do it without investing in myself.
Right.
You see, when you're younger and you're in your 20s and 30s and even 40s, you tend to think, oh, well, I'll just pick this up as I go, and not realising that the clock's ticking. There's not many of us that want to work much past the 60 or 65 these days, and a lot of us would like to, finish earlier than that, I know. The sooner you get mentoring, the better it is. And what I did was that I just sort of stumbled along, picked up by all means, I did my advertising and marketing courses when I was in my early 20s, but there was a big gap between then and when I decided to invest in myself through some mentors. And having done that, the escalation in my income just...
Wow.
Because all of a sudden, my raw skills were honed into skills that were going to make me money rather than stumbling around.
Yeah, of course. And I think you're probably seeing this as you've moved into this industry. There's a lot of free events out there. And sometimes people get almost develop a false belief system that they can get everything they need for free without having to invest.
Yep. Yeah, and you can't, because you and I know, being seminar speakers, that the free events are I guess, seminars or conventions that only give you so much.
Yeah.
And if you go to every free event and think that that's going to be the saviour of your business and is going to help your business grow, then you've got another thing coming, because what you should do, and this is not a self-promotion for you and me, I mean, it may not be you and me that anyone chooses, but the point is choose a mentor or two or three or four and stick with them. And obviously only if they're delivering value,
of course.
but be careful that you don't spray bullets everywhere, because at the end of the day, I think, unless you're in the game that we're in, where we are selling information, there's a certain capacity that you can handle when you're a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. So this leads me to another question. It sounds to me, in your 30 plus years of marketing, that you've probably had your back against the wall a few times. Maybe not even in marketing, just in life or in business. Has there ever been a time where you've had everything stacked against you, and you felt like there was no way out of the situation or what you're in, and you managed to get yourself out?
Yeah, no, there has, and I'll be serious for a moment, Kerwin, because there was a very, very serious stage in my life where I lost 2.2 million in 1 week.
Wow. Your own money or a client?
Yeah, my own money. Yeah, my own money. Yeah, thankfully not a client. But yeah, I had worked in the Woolworths empire for some time, and then I left and set up my own business called Dynamic Ideas.
Right.
Okay. A few of my mates at the time who were I was the only one with a collar and tie at that time. They were builders and plumbers and electricians. They didn't call it Dynamic Ideas. They thought my ideas were so bad they called it Dynamic Diarrheas. And I thought that was very hurtful too. But
I shouldn't be laughing.
No, you shouldn't be. No. But this is what mates do, of course. They're supposedly in Australia.
I'm here to support you, man.
Oh,
I got you
terrific.
back.
So anyway, Dynamic Diarrheas, as they would call it, we produced a lot of scratch bingo games for the newspapers. So we were the big producer of scratch bingo games for all the newspapers at the time, and for radio stations and so forth, McDonald's and KFC, all the fast food chains. So we did a lot of that sort of stuff, and I was doing okay. I built up to a staff number of 20, 21, 22 people, and we had quite a handy business, and we were doing all the big sales promotions for a lot of big businesses. So when you had clients like News Limited and Fairfax and McDonald's and KFC and Red Rooster and all those sorts of places, yeah, we were doing okay. Anyway, I decided to get into the trading card business. Why? Because I could see the repetitive...
Like baseball card?
Yeah, baseball card.
Right.
Yeah, but in Australia it's the rugby league and, and cricket. And how that came about is that when you are doing all of the fast food promotions, and you can see the benefit of this repetitive trade where they collect one Happy Meal toy this week and they've got to go back and collect the next Happy Meal toy. And I could see this repetitive trade stuff, and I thought, gee, the bingo games and all of these things that I'm doing, which we called continuity promotions at the time, it's working for other people, but I'm getting $20,000 here and $50,000 there. Wonder if I, sort of did my own products and I could make the millions instead of the 20,000s. And I could see the rugby league bubblegum cards were just sitting idle. And there was a company that for many years had held the license with the rugby league called Scanlon's Bubblegum, and they were asleep at the wheel. And so therefore I went into the rugby league and said, look, I want the license for the rugby league. I'll take it to new levels. I'll put them on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph where they can give them out samples of a Sunday, just like Michael Bublé and the Wiggles do with their CDs. And then once they get the first couple of samples, the kids will run into the news agency and pay the $2 for the rest of the card. And we pitched and pitched and pitched. Well, we weren't the only ones going for the licence. There was 2 or 3 other companies going for the licence. This was back in the mid-90s.
Yep.
And in the meantime, I picked up licences from Disney, and it was Aladdin and the Beauty and the Beast and the Lion King sort of movies. And as it turned out, I was doing okay out of those. So the kids would buy these at the news agencies and collect the cards, which meant that they would have to buy $2 packs all the time. I went over to America on one particular occasion just to do another deal with Disney, and whilst I was away, my staff were running the business for me, and unfortunately made a big printing mistake. And when I won't bore you with the details, but one of our big card programs that was going through, the cards were printed with wrong numbers on them. And so we had to destroy the cards. And I got off the aeroplane, and my staff were there waiting for me, my senior staff, and said, I'm sorry, we've made a mistake whilst you've gone. And I said, what was that? And they said, this is it. And immediately I spoke to my wife and said, look, take a photo of the house because it's gone. And we lost 2.2 in 1 week. So basically all the stock had to be brought back from the news agencies and Big W and Kmart and basically burnt. We couldn't use it. And so therefore that was tough, and we lost our house and everything else that goes with it. And you wouldn't believe it, I'll never forget it. We drove out of our home, having lost it, on Mother's Day. So I remember I had 6 kids. We had 6 kids under 12 at the start, and we've got 6 kids aged 15 to 27 now. But at the time we had 6 under 12. It was a big family. And I was driving the Tarago with all the kids in the back, and I looked over and I could see the tears just rolling down my wife's face. It was Mother's Day, and this was the present she was getting. She lost her house. So anyway, as it turned out, again, you are who you are surrounded with, and I had some great mates, as I'm sure you do, and they knew that we were down on our luck, and we were moving into a little unit in Sutherland without any food. We just didn't have any money for food. We just lost everything, and we had all of our food. Anything we had was in an esky, and we didn't have any money for a refrigerator. And I didn't want to tell my family, my mum and dad, and so forth. But my dad knew there was something wrong, and Dad said to me, "Listen, is there anything I can help you with, son?" And I said, "Oh no, it's all right. We've just come to Sydney. We're just moving out of our house." We were in the country at the time, a beautiful 14-acre property, and we had to move back to Sydney. And he said, "Look, how about a couple of thousand?" And I said to Dad, "You wouldn't have a couple of million, would you?" Well, you wouldn't believe it. Here's my sarcasm. He had a heart attack the next day.
Oh,
and
wow.
And he's still alive today. This was a long time ago, but yeah, you can imagine.
Is it something you put in his tea? You're thinking, oh, maybe a quick range of wealth to inheritance. I thought
no, it wasn't to get the inheritance because there wasn't much there. You know?
I thought about that once. I thought I'd take my mum skydiving. It was actually a wealth creation strategy. Yeah, but she lived. But anyway,
wealth creation strategy. Look, and it was a pretty tough time, and
that must have been tough.
You know, I remember even at that time. This sounds really corny and philosophical, but I remember at that time our wow, the only wow that we could have, because I was living with that wow philosophy even at the time, was a Chinese meal on a Friday night. I knew that we couldn't afford to really do anything other than just have, sausages of an evening. But I used to say to Gal, my wife, look, let's just make sure we still have a wow. So Friday night would be the takeaway Chinese, was a big deal. Now, the way I got out of it was the rugby league. The bank moved in and said I had to cut my staff from 24 to 10, and that's awful when you've got to say goodbye to 14 staff. And so the bank said, look, can you stay alive? I said, look, I think I'm going to get the rugby league licence. And they said, yeah, when? I said, by the end of this month. Well, it'd been going for 3 or 4 months. I had no clue when they were going to make up their mind. They said, you've got till the 30th of the month. And this was like the 4th. So anyway, we downsized. I kept on ringing up the rugby league every single day. And as it turned out, on the 29th of the month, the day before the bank was going to close me down, I got a call from Graham Clark, who's now a dear friend, but at the time I didn't know him very well, and he was the licensing manager for the rugby league.
Wow.
And I take the phone call shaking, and he said, JD, I've got some news for you. I said, yes. And he had no idea what I was up against. He said, you've got the rugby league football card, trading card licence. And I went, oh, wow. Thank God. And he said, but on one condition. I said, anything. He said, you never ever ring me ever again. It's a deal. So we got saved and by the bell, and I went and did all the big marketing with the newspapers and gave away the sample cards in all the Sunday newspapers, and we got on the footy show, and we had Fatty Vorton and Mal Meninga promoting all the stuff that I would do.
Yeah.
We took the cards from 2 million to 12 million in 1 year in turnover.
Wow.
Yeah, so we six-folded the cards because I got Rupert Murdoch to promote them for me. But basically they fell out of every newspaper you could think of, sample. A sample of a little bit of cardboard was a cent. So for me to give the newspapers 2 million cards to give out with the Sunday newspapers, it was 20 grand. They would give me $500,000 worth of TV exposure, saying, get your Sunday Telegraph this week and get your free Mal Meninga card.
Oh, wow.
So once this, and that's what Michael Bublé and the Wiggles do now. Yeah. No one else does it. And we made all the money back within 14 months, and we got back on our feet. So we got out of
Mate, that's incredible.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Really, wow, that's actually quite a moving story. Oftentimes we hear about psychology, and oftentimes people refer to it as a mindset and the importance of mindset in business. But in terms of marketing, do you believe that there's a certain psychology that is required in order to market successfully?
Yeah, positivity. There's no question. I mean, again, that sounds a little corny maybe, but people might be watching this and go, oh, dough, of course. But, there's so much depression out there, isn't there? I mean, I just know in our circle of friends how many of them are depressed, and they're largely depressed because of business worries.
Yeah.
And I try and help wherever I possibly can to tell them to surround themselves with the right people, get themselves some mentors, because mostly mentors are positive. Can I just put a PS to that story, and I think it's a way of answering this. When I was down on my luck, we had to take the kids out of their school and put them into a new school. And I'll never forget, on this particular morning, I was taking them to their little St. Joseph's Catholic school, and we'd just lost $2 million like 2 or 3 weeks earlier, and our whole life is upside down. And I pull out from the curb to take the kids to school, put the seatbelt across me, but because I didn't have it properly across me as I pulled out, a police siren woo, 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 pulls me over, books me for not having a seatbelt on. I thought, oh, that'd be right, $2 million down, there goes another 100 or 200. Then, because the kids were running late for school, school, I put my foot on the accelerator. I got pulled over on the way to school for speeding. And I thought, oh, this is terrific. Like, give me a break.
When it rains, yeah?
You got it. And when we got to their school, I dropped them off, and there was a church next door. And I thought, no, I'll just say a prayer. And so I got out of the car, and I got to the front door of the church. It was locked, of course. And then I went around to the side. It was locked. And so I said, I get the message, all right, give up. And the priest was just about to open up the church door. He said, can I help you? I said, I just thought I'd have a word to go upstairs, but obviously he's not open. Have you got a drive-through? You know? And so he opened it up, and I just ducked in, and I said a prayer to the big fella upstairs. Just said, look, is there any chance at all I could just get a house? I don't want to be rich. You know, just can I have a house just to give the kids back a roof over their head, and I'll do something incredible to inspire other people if you can just help me through this. Well, you wouldn't believe it. In a number of weeks, we got back on our feet, and 14 months later, we had paid all the money back, and we had people like the Murdoch Empire throwing money at us to buy the business. I sold the business after I got back on my feet.
Right.
And so it went from I guess the basement to the penthouse pretty quickly. And I had to pay back if I make a promise, and I'm sure you're the same as the Aussie way. Handshake's a handshake, even if it's with the big fella. So I said to Gail, once we sold the business and I had a lot of money on my in my pocket, I said, look, I just want to take some time off and do something special. And so I put together a pilot for a TV show called Dreams Can Come True. And this was all about making dreams come true for needy people. My dream had come true. I'd been given my house, I got a house back for the family, and much, much more. And so therefore I got Mal Meninga together with me, and I said to him, look, can you deliver a dream to a little 15-year-old boy in Tamworth whose father, unfortunately, was abusive to his mum and him, and left them. And he lived in a caravan park, and the local parish minister or priest had told us this little boy was a mad Mal Meninga fan. And so Mal surprised him in his school and took him to a football game. And we filmed it, and I took it to Channel 10 and said, how would you like this on every week? And they cried, they just tears, And they said to me at the time, I had a girl working with me called Linda, and I'd never made a TV show before, but I thought if I can just prove to the country that good news sells. I was sick of going to bed at night time watching the news and people killing, stabbing, murdering. It was just terrible. Let's give them some good news before they go to bed. So Channel 10 said, yeah, good, but we need big stars. Who else have you got? And I said, Michael Jordan. I mean, you got Michael Jordan? And Bill Woods comes running into the room, who was the sports announcer. You got Michael Jordan? So yeah. How do you get Michael Jordan? I didn't, of course. And I just said, we contacts with the football cards, baseball cards. So anyways, it's turned out they booked half a dozen of these shows. And as we're leaving, we wave goodbye in the elevator, and we get in the elevator, and Linda, who's with me, going, fantastic, high fives, we've got our first TV show. And I said, yeah, I just want you to get one thing for me. She said, what's that? Anything? I said, get Michael Jordan. Well, wait for this. We just put out the All Points Bulletin to the Smith family and Make-A-Wish and all those people, and there was a Gosford little boy, 15-year-old in the Central Coast, Gosford, suffered from spina bifida, and he's a wheelchair basketball athlete, but a fantastic one. His dream of all dreams was to see the Chicago Bulls play basketball. I put a letter through to Jordan's office, by fax in those days because it was the mid-90s, and Michael Jordan happened to be walking past his fax machine the next morning, pulled it out. He got 2.2 million requests a year for personal greetings. This was when he was, a big star, and he pulled this one out, and he looked at it and said to his secretary, this is from Australia, make it happen. And so we actually surprised the little boy that he was not only going to see a Chicago Bulls game, but we were going to film him going over and having a personal lunch with Michael Jordan.
Wow.
So we got Princess Di, Steven Spielberg, we got the X-Files people, Paul Hogan, you name it, biggest stars in the world, all came together to produce this TV show called Dreams Can Come True.